This is ODAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the ODAT Chat podcast. My name is Arlena, and I'll be your host. Before I jump into the episode overview, there are some kick-ass recovery resources I wanted to share with you. On the podcast website, you will find a list of books that I reference in this episode and previous episodes. So you can find it at odatchat.com, and ODAT is spelled O-D-A-A-T, for those of you that don't know. Okay, and if you like the Audible versions of these books, you can get your first book free when you sign up for an Audible subscription through the link on the homepage. That's it for the book resources, but there is also a list of recovery podcasts similar to this one that you will absolutely love. My personal feeling is that we're stronger together, so I'm happy to share some of the best recovery podcasts, like the Bubble Hour, hosted by my friend Jean McCarthy. She was actually a guest. There's the Share podcast, hosted by the dynamic and ever fabulous Omar Pinto. And last but certainly not least, Light Hustler by the amazing, I believe she is a New York Times bestseller author, Anna David. She's amazing. You will love her. She's super funny. Lastly, check out Sober Nation, which has tons of articles, a network of podcasts that hopefully I'll be a part of at some point, and an online community. So links will be listed in the episode show notes as well as the website. So these are some of the resources I use in my daily life that help me, so I think they will help you too. In today's episode, this is actually part 2 with my super smart and interesting friend Neil. I just realized I've said super a bunch of times, but in this case, it also applies. I had too much to talk to him about to fit it all on one episode, so he came back. As it turns out, the conversation kind of turns into a little bit of therapy for me, but it presented an opportunity for Neil to share some meaningful insights. So you're welcome. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So without further delay, please enjoy this encore episode with Neil. Well, Neil, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
I'm back.
You're back. So you're the first person to come back for round 2. So,
I'm excited about that.
I know. Well, listen, we had so much to talk about the first time, and then we kind of ran out of time. So we just barely scratched the surface on atheism. I have lots of questions about that because I grew up in the church. So,
right.
But I'm also kind of a science girl, well, I don't want to say I'm an intellectual, but I do want to challenge my own thinking. And I have over the, I'm a big girl, so I've spent a lot of time thinking about, what do I really believe and what has been indoctrinated. So I'd love to.
Yeah, I'm a super big fan of picking a fight with what I think I believe.
Okay, yeah.
Because until I pick a fight with it, I'm never really sure, I'm not convinced of what I believe.
Right.
And that means you can threaten it anytime.
Yeah.
But once I've picked a fight with it, then I really know where I stand with it, whether I really own it or I can discard it.
Like it's a defendable position, right?
Right. Then you can't hurt me.
Right.
And I can choose to agree or disagree with you. But until I've done that, I'm constantly threatened by everything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the litmus test of how I became an out-of-the-closet atheist.
Out of the closet.
Yeah.
Why do you say out of the closet? Was there a sense of feeling ashamed about it? Or persecuted, maybe?
No, I didn't really concern myself with that. I played along. I never really believed in a higher power, but I got sober young and dove in with the young people, and I just rolled with whatever they were doing. Mm-hmm. But I had this sense in the back of my head that some of the stuff that I was hearing at meetings and some of the stuff that was written in the book, I just didn't agree with, because I had evidence in my own personal life that contradicted it. Mm-hmm. But I would play along and say God, and I do the Lord's Prayer and stuff like that. And When I worked steps with people, we talked about God. And in the back of my head, what I was using was the spirit of the principles.
Okay.
And that became more and more formulated over the years as being what my real core value is that I worship the principles.
Okay.
And the principles are common amongst all of us, regardless of God or no God, religion, which flavor.
Right.
We all have the principles in common, and so we have that common language. And so
That's
now when I work with
interesting.
people, I still talk about God with them knowing that I'm an atheist. With
You
them,
use the term.
yeah, because that's the language that they're comfortable with.
Right.
And we have that common language of the principles, so source doesn't matter.
Source doesn't matter.
And even the book says source doesn't matter.
It does. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
In what context?
Your relationship with your creator is none of my business. It's not
Okay.
my job to sell you on a specific version of God.
Yeah.
My job is to help you practice principles within that belief system.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, and I think it's, sponsorship is a funny thing where you really are not supposed to be pushing your ideas onto somebody
Right.
else. We're really supposed to be focusing on just the actual steps, right? But I find myself being tempted to want to do like therapy, and I do I do bring God into it all the time.
It's each person is different, and so
Yeah.
I can get some guy. Carney used to you'd line 20 people up that John Carney sponsored, and ask all of them how he sponsored them, and you get 15 different answers
Okay.
because he was really good at meeting you wherever you were at.
Oh.
And that was my one huge takeaway from John when John worked with me is I got that. And so I carried that into how my sponsorship style in working with others is I find out where you're coming from, what you need, and what your position is in things, and then I meet you there. I don't try to bring you over to my side.
Right.
Because you're not going to get sober or get spiritual on my timeline. You're going to get it on yours.
Right. Yeah, you have to meet someone where they're at. That
Right.
makes sense. Yeah, you'd be a good sales guy. Actually.
Except I can't lie.
I think that's a common misconception about sales is that you really do have to meet people where they are and find out like where the gaps are in order to make sense about things.
Right.
And new ideas, really. And so as a sponsor, I have found that I'm trying to present new ideas to people. And so if you don't start with where they are, it's not going to make any sense.
Right. And new ideas to myself.
Right.
I have to keep growing spiritually too.
Right. So you use that term, you're growing spiritually. So if you don't believe in a higher power and you believe in principles, there's like, I don't even know where to start with this. The higher power thing, because when I first got sober, I had a sponsor that took me to El Paseo, this outdoor mall that had an outdoor fountain.
Uh-huh.
It was really tall. And we were doing our third step prayer. I was turning my will and my life over to the care of God. And she had me step into the fountain. Kimmer's what a rebel. She had me step into the fountain. And there was like this wall, and it had water coming down the wall. And she had me put my hands. She goes, okay, now make it go the other way. I was like, bitch, you crazy. What are you talking about? She was like, that's a power greater than you. And I was like, oh, okay. Because when I first got sober, I was confused that because I had grown up with the church and then couldn't do it right. But I later realized I misunderstood the purpose of church. But I wasn't doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And I thought I was going to be condemned to some
Right.
alternate, very bad universe. So I decided if I couldn't be good, I was going to be good at getting back. So I just totally went away from church and God because I thought I was supposed to be a certain way. And then I come into the program and I'm like so desperate. I was like, God help me, and then magical things started to happen from that place of surrender. I bet you've experienced this too when you reach this like energy level within yourself of surrender.
Yeah.
Like where finally ready to let go of what you think you know in order for something new to come in. And that almost felt like I don't know if it's necessarily, like, I don't care if we call it God or whatever it is. It did feel like an energy that was different and better than what I was currently working with.
Right. But I would call that serotonin or dopamine.
Yeah.
And just because I look at the science and biology and physics and Darwinian psychology of things, doesn't mean that I lose the majesty and the amazing feeling of it when things happen.
Okay.
I lose none of that.
All right. So, yeah, that does make sense to me, though, that, dopamine and serotonin being released.
Yeah.
But couldn't it be that, like, once I had an awareness and was able to surrender, I don't know. It seems like, that's just my biology taking over at that point from my psychology?
Once I've hit bottom and I've completely surrendered.
Yeah.
Like Bill had the blinding white light.
Right.
And threw himself from his bed in Towns Hospital. And I'm reading that and I'm thinking, well, yeah, he's going through DTs.
Oh, yeah.
And that was his spiritual experience, was a seizure.
A seizure.
And no one's argued with me against that. But that's my interpretation of what he calls a miracle.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the physiology behind it, and that's probably what happened.
Okay, the physiology behind it. No, that's really cool.
And I don't care. I mean, I'm not out dissuading anybody from their belief about that.
No.
That's your miracle. That's what you need to see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see, I like that. Because I do like explaining things with science. And there are times when I sit at meetings and people give credit to God. And I'm just so confused sometimes because I do feel like, let's see here. You did all kinds of work and you got a result. Why is that why are you chalking that up to God? Or, I don't know. I wish I had a very specific example, but I do sit in meetings and sort of, but I also feel like I have a spiritual practice that when I'm in it and asking for help, like things happen in my orbit that feel magical. Yeah,
because I shift consciousness. I go from worshiping fear to worshiping love.
Right, yeah.
And those are my higher and lower consciousness. And when I'm worshiping love, I'm practicing honesty and open-mindedness, willingness, courage, integrity, brotherly love, service.
Okay, those are the principles you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. And when I'm worshiping fear, I get into the character defects.
How do you define worshiping?
Giving energy and attention to.
Okay, yeah.
Like you would give attention and energy to your belief in God. And direct your energy to that, aiming for higher consciousness.
Okay.
You call it God, I call it love.
Okay. Well, actually, that's how I define God is love at the end of the day. Yeah.
Right. Which is why I have no problem whatsoever in discussing atheism versus humanism versus whatever your religious beliefs may be. Because we all have the common language in the middle there that we can all discuss.
Yeah, I feel like if you throw out the word God, everyone's kind of on board. Like, people define it differently, but I think we all kind of have like this understanding that there's like this energy that's undefinable. Like, you can't really define it completely.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for those of us who've been there for a while and we've kind of owned our seat and we know we belong.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I decided to come out as an atheist and to say, hey, I'm an atheist at meeting level is because I was sitting in a meeting one night and this guy was talking and he said, don't pray for patience because God will throw all kinds of situations in your life where you have to practice patience and it's going to be horrible. And I sat there going, no, I've heard this same drag 20 times. And my experience with that is when I contemplate patience, I become very keenly aware of just what an impatient asshole I am.
Yeah.
None of my outer circumstances actually change. I just become aware of my place in those circumstances.
You become aware of your inability to be patient.
Yeah.
And then in that awareness of like being impatient, it gives you an opportunity to practice, and you find that over time you become more patient. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same
but I become aware of it. And what this guy was saying is
that God gives it to you.
Yeah, God dumps trouble on you. And I thought, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. And people are going to listen to that and try really hard to buy into that belief system, and it's a failure.
It's interesting that he would say, don't pray for patience.
Well, he said, be careful about praying for patience. And I've heard people use that same kind of shtick for any principle. Don't pray for whatever, because then X is going to happen. At that moment, at that meeting, that was, 15 years ago, I said, nope, I need to let people know that there is another angle here.
Right.
And I knew many people that had left the program because they felt like they couldn't have it because they didn't believe in God.
I've heard that.
And there is a great difference between our literature and what people see in meetings. Mm-hmm. The meeting culture is quasi-religious.
Oh, it absolutely
and
is.
For a newcomer walking in who, maybe they had a horrible upbringing in the Christian church, or whatever the story was, or they never had a belief at all. Mm-hmm. They walk into this, they're court ordered to, or they stumble into this self-help program, and they're doing the Lord's Prayer, and they're doing the Serenity Prayer, and it's God, 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 God throughout, and people condescend to you.
If you don't
buy in.
If you don't buy into God. They say find a God of your own understanding.
They use that escape clause. But the way they treat people very often in meetings is a condescending, oh, well, God may run you out, but alcohol will run you back.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time that I decided to do this, my purpose in doing it was there's 50 people in a meeting, and 45 of you are all good with the varying degrees of God.
Right.
There's 5 in the back that feel like they're never going to get this. Mm-hmm. So I'm speaking to them. You 45 are good. I'm not worried about you.
Yeah.
And if you're offended by my atheism,
Yeah, I don't mind offending people.
I've been sober forever. You're not going to run me out, and I've probably sponsored more people than you, and whatever.
Yeah,
and I'm good.
And you'll hear it in the intro. You haven't heard your last episode yet, but in my intro, when I describe you and Stephanie, it's like you guys have cultivated a community of people who are on the fringes.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you gave them a home. And I wonder what would happen to these people had it not been for you and Stephanie. I mean,
right.
You created a safe place for people who are, and listen, we're already a community of outcasts.
Right.
Right? And then to be outcast within this community where you're supposed to feel safe, that has to leave people feeling super isolated.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the fourth dimension is that we're the list in the third tradition in the 12 by 12, the list of everything that AA didn't want.
Okay.
In that cautionary tale in the third tradition, where the prisoners, queers, playing crackpots, fallen women, and all those. Mm-hmm.
I thought all the women in AA were fallen women.
Well, yeah. In fact, when we say fallen women during the intro, they all go woo.
That's awesome. Ain't no shame in my game.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. We tend to be there's a fair amount of bisexual, gay, transgendered sex workers, artists.
Current sex workers?
Some.
Really?
Yeah.
What time is this meeting? What time should I be there? I mean, I'm not saying I'm a sex worker, but I think people in the kink world. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily all that. Mm. It's just all people that feel like they're not the normal fit for AA. Right.
And we talk about everything there. We're not you talk about alcohol and that's it. Or we kind of look at it as if it happens in my sobriety, it happens in my recovery. If it happened in my disease, it's part of my program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I should be able to talk about it.
Yeah, because we were talking earlier, I don't know anybody that has just one addiction.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I started the podcast, because I wanted to be able to talk about all that other stuff that we're not supposed to talk about in the rooms.
Yeah, I was telling my niece on the way home that I was going to do the podcast today, and I explained that it was your opportunity to be able to put out there all the stuff that we're not supposed to talk about in meetings.
Yeah.
So everybody else knows that, I'm not the only one that goes through this, feels this, struggles with this.
Yeah.
And that's valuable and important.
Yeah, I think so, right? There's so much. And that's why there's all these other 12-step groups, because people want to talk about their specific issue. And I'm not sure, like, the language is important around, like, I've been talking to people on the podcast I've talked to sex addicts, gamblers, people who struggle with eating disorders.
Yeah.
And it always comes back to the same type of solution. To me, it doesn't matter what the problem is, the solution is the same. But there's something so healing about and really connecting when you find a group of people who struggle the exact same way that you do. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But in context to the secondary and tertiary addictions, if I'm going to a meeting and we're only talking about alcohol and recovery from alcoholism, that's good for a while. But then I'm drifting off into escapism because we're escape artists.
Oh my God.
And I work around the steps maybe, and I get relief from alcohol. Then my mind is still kind of wired towards escape.
Yes.
And wired to feel apart from, and I probably haven't gotten the chemical imbalances that we almost all of us have in the program. Haven't got those straightened out yet. So I'm still feeling ill at ease.
Right.
Maybe I got a little taste of the 9 step promises, but as a whole, they haven't sunk in yet. I really believe that I've seen a lot of people go out around 4 to 6 years. We call it the 5-year thing, because there comes a point at somewhere between 4 and 6 years where all my character defects that I still was kind of holding on to, that still kind of worked for me, the bottom falls out on those. And at that point, I either have to say, I'm completely recommitting myself to this process, or fuck it, screw AA, it doesn't work.
Double down or bounce.
Yep.
Yeah,
And a lot of that has to do with the secondary and tertiary addictions not working anymore. Because we're still practicing those, whether it's anger or sex addiction or martyrdom, codependency.
Oh my God, the martyrdom. I cannot tolerate the martyrdom.
But it's all attempts to try to control and feel safe in my own skin.
Right.
In my environment. And I have a psychological understanding of what the principles are. But they haven't, for the majority, they haven't really dropped from my head to my gut yet.
Yeah.
Because as a matter of time. I haven't had time to let them become a part of my DNA yet.
It does take time.
Yeah.
These ideas take time for them to really take root and sort themselves out.
It absolutely is true.
Took me 2 years from the time that I hit my bottom to finally coming into the rooms. It took me 2 years to wrestle with the idea of what is an alcoholic and when did I cross the line. And one question led to another,
Right.
But it took me 2 years of wrestling with that to finally show up. And then it took me like 60 days to get 30. And then I was okay. But I felt like that, and looking back now, I feel like that was pretty quick. Because
yeah, it can be.
2 years to
From the point you started questioning it for the first time? Yeah.
But you know what happened is very beginning, I came across Tony Robbins. I know, and it said, I know, I always get that reaction, Tony Robbins is like a big joke. But it was interesting because I was introduced to a different thought system, meaning I wasn't aware that I could change the way I behaved. Because I was in sales at the time. I had just started my first sales job. And I was dating the boss. I was sleeping with my boss, but I was working for him and his wife. So it was a little awkward.
Right.
She wasn't aware of how awkward it was, really. But, I mean, I was living in this.
Or she was conveniently not paying attention to it because it served her purposes.
Maybe. Because homeboy cheated on that woman from the day they started dating, practically. And they're still married. It's been 25 years, probably.
Yeah, well, women aren't stupid.
I'm sure some of them are. Listen, but the reason I bring that up is, I forgot, why am I bringing this up? I just wanted to tell you how bad I was, I think.
Tony Robbins.
Oh, thank
Changing
you.
Your Thinking.
Thank you. So I was in sales, and I have this ambitious drive. Like, I grew up kind of poor, and so I was like, I didn't want to live that way. So I was in sales, and I got a hold of this Tony Robbins thing, and because I wanted to change my behavior, and I couldn't. Right? And I would do like all these like goal setting workshops, exercises that are in his program, but it was to change my behavior. And the top of the list was always stop doing drugs and alcohol. And I couldn't. Yeah. I couldn't. But the path was laid out for me. It's like, it was all, not religious, but all like behavioral change. Like, what is your why? What are your values? Like your core beliefs? How do you, like, I got it that if I changed my beliefs and my thoughts, that I could change my reality, right? And I wasn't even aware that was a thing. Like, I could do that. I thought I was who I was, and that if I just worked hard enough, that I would get stuff. Right. But I couldn't make myself do it. And then it was like, oh, it's because of the way you think. It's your core beliefs. So that wasn't religious, right? But it's still life-changing. Right. And that was
for sure.
Yeah. And so that was the first time I was aware that I could change. I thought I could change my belief system and my behaviors. Turns out I couldn't get rid of the drugs and alcohol until I got to AA and used the concept of God and a higher power. That was what I was comfortable with. And I was.
Were you doing the Tony Robbins thing by yourself?
Yeah.
That's also a big difference.
Yeah.
For me,
community is so important.
Yes, as important as the steps is, community is just as important.
Oh yeah.
And that's a truism for any organization on the planet. Having a sense of community and belonging goes so much further than almost any other component of the group.
I would have to agree 100%, and I'll refer to that study that they did with the rats. Like, they put a rat alone with a bottle of water with cocaine in it, and then another bottle of just water, and the rat drank the cocaine water until it died. But then someone said, hey, let's put the rat in Rat Park, and let's give it lots of toys, let's give it other friends. Yep. And the two bottles were still there, and none of the rats drank the cocaine water.
Yeah,
but
the
they
sense
were
of purpose and belonging.
Yeah, and connection.
Yep.
And I feel like loneliness as an alcoholic, that feeling of isolation and just being disconnected, that's where the source of my pain was.
Yep. And that's why when we have our meetings on Saturday nights, and after the meeting's over, we do it in the backyard or on the fire. So we just keep the fire going and throw some music on and eat and laugh and connect with each other on everything other than just recovery.
Right.
Not just meet and speak. We talk about life and things that crack us up and things we're passionate about, and we build those bonds with each other.
Right. Multifaceted and.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference.
Huge difference. Yeah. I go to the ODAP meeting, the 6 a.m. meeting, and I feel like that's I bond and connect with those people outside the meeting. Yeah. Which is hugely important.
Yeah. At Denny's?
We go to the Los Gatos Cafe. One next to Nob
Hill. Oh, it's not the 6 a.m. meeting that...
Oh, no, not Denny's. Okay. No, yeah.
I tried that once.
Yeah. That's a rough crowd.
It's 6 a.m.
Well, the other 6 a.m. is like a lot of professionals, like a lot of business professionals, like Silicon Valley. Like, there's some...
Yeah, I'm not that.
But it's funny, I am, but you and I still connect because we have so much in common.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not a Silicon Valley guy, so we can't be friends.
Yeah.
No, I get along with all kinds of flavors and styles and sizes.
Yeah. I'm a little judgy, I have to admit. There are some meetings where I don't feel like I feel uncomfortable. Like, I've chaired the Denny's meeting where people are like, there's like mental illness and homelessness and I remember, but this is a funny thing. I will go into that meeting and go, oh my God, they're not going to relate to me at all. They're not going to get anything out of my story. Because frankly, I grew up in Sunnyvale. It's like in Cupertino, so
right.
Like,
Vanillaville.
Kinda, yeah.
At least it was then.
Yeah, pretty much. But as soon as I started talking, I'm always reminded and surprised that it doesn't matter what our certain situations are, the feelings are all the same.
Yeah.
we all feel isolated. We all feel different. We all feel the need to change change how we feel. We use, so
the insides is all very comparable.
Very comparable.
You were talking earlier about thinking your way into right living.
Yeah.
And early in, after I got into recovery, there was a whole pile of us that got crazy about Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, yeah. You like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've taught that book several times over the years.
Wow.
And even then, I was agnostic, leaning towards atheism. But Fox's study on Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes is where I got my super big passion about the principles and them being absolutes.
Okay.
And the idea...
principles are absolutes.
Yeah. And the idea that I can see the East Foothills and throw a rock at it, and I'm not going to hit the East Foothills. But if I give it everything I got, I'm going to get a hell of a lot further than if I lob the rock to the fence that's 20 feet away.
Right.
And in that way, I learn how to practice the principles deeper and deeper.
Yes.
By doing them in areas and ways that are super uncomfortable. Because if they're absolutes, that means that honesty is absolutely correct all the time. But I have this list of things that I can't be honest about. And even more so, I can't be honest to myself about them.
Right.
And so when I push myself and try to practice that principle when it's inconvenient and uncomfortable and scary, that's when I actually grow.
Oh.
Never when it's easy.
Okay, here's a funny thing, and you can do a little therapy with me here. Because I have this belief that if you spot it, you got it. Right? If we can't love or hate something about somebody else unless it's something we love or hate about ourselves. And so early in my recovery, I decided I was going to try to have the courage to acknowledge that whenever I'm upset with somebody else, whatever it is that is at the core of me judging them, like, for instance, there's somebody in my life and I've been wrestling with this idea that maybe they're constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves, right? And then I go, fuck, does that mean... that means I'm unconstitutionally incapable of being honest with myself on some level. And I really do want to be honest, but it's hard for me to see my own lies because I'm trying to protect something.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. I kind of know what it is, but it's like this, like I feel like I'm ambitious and trying to do things, but I also have like a pretty healthy level of fear, right? And I recently acknowledged that I have a core thing of safety. Like that's my core value. Like everything revolves around being safe. Like I want to keep my kids safe. I want to be healthy.
Right.
I want to be safe. But that is in direct conflict with ambition. It's like,
it's true.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm switching jobs and I'm like, oh God, what if I'm not successful? Or like
that's scary.
It's so scary. And it's like, so, okay, I have to be honest with myself about my day-to-day activities, and when you're in sales, you're facing rejection all the time.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I wish, I know, anyway, I feel like
So 2 years ago, this girl brought a guy over to the meeting for the first time. He was at CDRP and he had like 3 days clean. And he'd been in and out forever. And she knew him from the punk scene. And she brought him to the meeting. She said, you're going to love this meeting. And she brought him to me specifically because he was an atheist. And part of his big issue with AA was the whole God thing.
The new guy was an atheist?
And so we got to talking and we figured, okay, I'm going to work with you and we're going to work some steps together. And I was on this website around the same time called AA Agnostica. And it's all things recovery towards atheism, agnosticism, and other, like a daily reflections book and all kinds of different literature written by different people. And I saw this book on there called the Alternative 12 Steps, A Secular Guide to Recovery. And I saw that and I read the preface and read a few pages out of it and I thought, I like this. I'm going to screw it. I'm buying 2 copies and him and me are going to go through it together. And we sat down for twice a week until we were done reading a chapter at a time. I would read a page, he would read a page, I would read a page, and we'd discuss it. as we went. And it was so earth-shatteringly refreshing. Because for me, because I've been doing the big book for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like Neo at the end of The Matrix with 50 Mr. Smiths.
Yeah.
You know, and I can sleepwalk my way through it.
Right.
And I've done it so many times that my ego knows exactly how to parse and sidestep and bullshit my way through it without actually learning anything new anymore.
Yeah.
And about 10 years ago, I started making people do the 4-column 4-step backwards.
Start with your part?
Mm-hmm. So...
Oh, that's interesting.
Normally, you would do the inventory as I'm mad at so-and-so because this happened and it affected these areas of my life and I was this. Mm-hmm. Reading it backwards, it's I am this, it affects these areas of my life, causes this problem with this person.
Ooh,
and boom!
So good.
The first time I do it with people, I watch the 7 stages of grief go over their face in like 30 seconds. The bargaining and anger and denial and finally acceptance. Where because we've been doing it this way forever, and we can again. I can.
It's a good way to start, but you're right. You do get sort of.
Yeah, I don't do it that way with new people.
Okay.
And just like I don't do the alternative 12 steps with new people.
Okay.
I want them to have the foundation first.
Right.
And after that, then we can branch out and do it backwards and do the alternative 12 steps. And the reason I bring up that book is because the stuff you're talking about denial and things that I blind myself to. Its version of the 4-step is to ask me 8 questions.
8?
Just 8 questions.
Okay.
And they're very specific questions about different aspects of my life. And I can answer them any way I want to because I'm going to write about whatever is pertinent and important to me at the time.
Okay.
And it teaches me how to think about situations in my life, not what to think about them. So I can take that process and plug it into anything that I'm struggling with, any person I'm struggling with, any behavior I'm struggling with.
Right. Okay. It's teaching you how to think about something, not what to think.
Right.
That's genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. A thought system.
Yeah. And it was written by 2 women. So it has a whole different angle on the 12 steps than Bill could have.
Right.
Bill couldn't have thought. They give a full form perspective on the steps because in ways that only women could see. And since all of us have masculine and feminine energy, it really addresses a lot more of the things inside all of us.
A more holistic approach.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And it deals a lot about in denial. Because one of the women that wrote it is an AA, she's Al-Anon. So it deals in codependency as well as addiction and addresses gambling and sex and love, and overeating, undereating.
Right, all of it.
All that. It mentions all of it in passing. It doesn't hyper-focus on anything.
Because it doesn't matter. It's about what the solution is. So that's an interesting exercise. So start with, I might actually have to try this. So you're saying, if I were to try this exercise, I would start with what I think my character defect is or what my part is, or... In regards to those 8 questions? So I start with the 8 questions first, and that leads to doing an inventory backwards? Oh, you want to do the 4-column format that we all know and are used to? Yeah, I'm going to try that. And do it backwards? Yeah. Yeah, well, you would write it out the way we always write it out. Okay. And then read it backwards. Oh, you just read it backwards. Oh, okay. Right, because that tricks your brain. It does. If you write it out backwards, your brain is going to play little mind games to still get the same result I'm used to that's comfortable and safe. Yeah. Little bits of ego I can nibble on that's okay. Yeah. It's tough to do that big leap. I felt like in the beginning of sobriety, I was able to grow in leaps and bounds because my life was so wildly out of whack that a few simple things helped me to grow in leaps and bounds. But almost 23 years later, I get little bumps every once in a while. We get lazy and comfortable. Ooh. Yeah, my life is pretty good. It works. But when it comes to, I really believe that I allow in my life what I feel like I deserve. Right? Yeah. And my house is relatively small. I feel safe in a small house. And in my mind, I feel like, oh, well, if I had a lot of money, I would get a big house. Well, in a small house, I am always aware of my entire perimeter, right? And I know where my boys are at all times. I know where my dog is. It makes me feel safe. Like, so having a big house is actually kind of scary to me.
Right.
Like, no one's going to break in here. You know what I mean? It's like, maybe they won't, but a big house, that seems like for sure, like, that's, you know, where the robbers want to go, or the house intruders or whatever. So I go into these jobs where I can make lots of money, but I sabotage because you know what I mean?
I totally get that.
I'm in direct conflict. It's like, how can I fix this? That's something I would really like to work on. I'm looking for tools to help me try to change that belief system. I actually have a friend who's a coach. And so, you know, it's like a sort of that Tony Robbins philosophy of change your beliefs. You know, about... You
really should check out the Alternative 12 Steps.
The alternate?
Alternative 12 Steps.
The Alternative 12. I'm going to. Okay. And that's what the 8 questions. Okay. I'm going to do that. I'm writing this down. Okay.
I've taken about 20 people through it in the last year and a half. All the guys I sponsor that have over 20 years, especially. And they all had the same reaction to it. A couple of them were stringent Christians. And they were absolutely thrilled with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not bullying about God or mean spirit in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And it talks about spirituality quite a bit, but in a different context, the way I would, as opposed to the way most people in AA would.
Right. Well, I don't think anybody should be afraid to examine their beliefs, because the truth is irrefutable. It's absolute, right? So I like the idea of the spirit of the principles, because those are absolutes. And I think at the end of the day, that was what religion was trying to shoot for. You know, they're ideals. And I had this concept that ideals are like the horizon. It's a mental construct. You know, you could walk towards the horizon, but you'll never get there.
Yeah, it's that's the exact same description I was doing of throwing a rock at the East Windows.
I got that.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah. So, yeah, they're just ideals that we're trying to work towards. And I think at the heart of it, I think that's what religion was aiming for. And then all this other crap got attached to it.
Yeah.
Because we're just human, and
the power and
we fuck it all up.
Politics and all that.
Yeah.
One of the guys that was a very stringent Christian, he believes in first century Christianity.
What does that mean?
Apparently, Christ's belief system was much more clean and clearly defined, much simpler. Back in the first century, and he eventually rejected the church altogether and focuses on that version of Christianity, and because it's much cleaner, much simpler.
Humans do tend to complicate things.
Much more well defined for him,
yeah.
And he had flown up from Orange County in order to do it in all 12 steps in 3 days, doing the alternative 12 steps.
Oh, okay.
And
this is someone you're working with?
Yeah. Well, it was a one-off. He's an old friend of mine, and I said, I'll do this with you. But I promised him to do it 2 months previous, and by the time he had flown up, I had a stroke.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And it was a minor stroke, but for about a month, my tongue was, twice its normal size, and and I tired out really fast.
Yeah.
So I would read a couple of paragraphs, and then I would have him read 2 pages.
Okay.
And then I would read a couple of paragraphs and 2 pages.
Yeah.
And he was really kind to me in the amount of effort he put into it, because he knew he needed to compensate for what I couldn't give at the time. But it was important to me to follow through on that, because he really wanted to.
Yeah. Well, and what is your experience? Like, what do you take away from that experience? Like, it was important for you to participate. Do you feel healed yourself during those processes?
It always does.
Yeah.
Because I don't go into it with my ego running the show. I'm not going in, well, I'm the sponsor. You must bow and worship and drop my name at every meeting you go to. In fact, my belief system is completely contrary to that in respect to the 12th tradition. I don't want my sponsees joke as I am he who shall not be named.
Voldemort.
because you are absolutely, you can talk about my sponsor said ... at a meeting, but you never get to say my sponsor Neil said ...
Oh, okay.
Because the me isn't the important part of it.
Right.
It's the relationship of having a sponsor that's the important part.
Yeah. Oh God, I am so guilty of being like. I love it when people drop my name. I go wee on the inside, and then there's like that other voice that goes, "Stop that."
Yeah. Well, my ego does.
Yeah.
My ego still wants to hear it.
Arlene said, and I was like, "That's right, bitches." You know, like a little part of me celebrates and.
Right. But that cockblocks me from actually getting anything out of working the steps with them.
Okay.
When I think that they need to remember that I'm the one that gave them this and to show me respect and pass on the good word of Neil, that kills it. Then I don't get anything out of it.
Okay.
When I'm one-on-one looking you in the eye, telling you the truth about me and making it safe to hear the truth about you, that's when
the magic happens.
That's when I keep healing.
Yeah, I get it. Oftentimes with my girls, it's, I don't feel that need to get credit when I'm working with somebody. It's only later. Like in the moment, I was like, wow, that is like magical. When you're really just trying to be of service. Yeah. And somebody learns something. I don't know. Actually, you know what?
What?
One time, you're all so good stuff. One time I was at a meeting and a sponsee, she didn't name me, but she said that something I said to her made a difference in her sobriety. And it brought me, I instantly started bawling because I knew she meant it. Like I loved her dearly and she had been struggling. And there was something like that got healed in me when she said I actually helped her. It was like all that shit that I went through was a value.
Yeah.
All that pain and suffering was a value, and it actually helped her. And it was like a really humbling experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it meant more to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had closed a big deal and got a big fat paycheck. It meant 10 times more to me. The actual feeling was way better than the money. The money comes and goes for me.
Yeah.
And it's like drugs. Like you get a big paycheck and you're like, woohoo! And then you need something bigger the next time to get that same woohoo. Yeah. Because after a while, it's just like, meh, whatever. I'll spend it.
Yeah, someone being kind, saying something that I wasn't expecting in ways that I wasn't expecting, that cuts through all the little Neil armor and facades and masks that I have up to protect myself from you. A simple act of kindness like that just sneaks right through all my defenses.
Isn't that funny?
And makes me leaky.
You'll have something in my eye.
And the fact that I can cry from joy is the biggest testament I have to the program. The power of it. When I tell people the eyeball story, I was in a fight, my eye got knocked out and I shoved it back in and finished the fight. Serious? When I tell stories like that and
you have not been safe, Neil.
When I tell stories like that and the guy on the other side of the table looks at me like, really? Are you sure you're not just a little full of shit right now? That, to me, is also massive proof that the program works. That they can't even conceive of this guy living like that guy.
Right.
Is super powerful.
That you are so different.
Right.
Yeah. That's good stuff. We do change.
Yeah.
We change a lot.
Yeah, we do. But it's so incremental, we don't notice it.
Sure.
Really. It's my friends that show up every half dozen years or so that are like, damn, you're different. You're still you, but your energy is different. You're not as angry. You're fat now, whatever.
You're fat now.
And we moved to New Orleans and it was the death of me.
I remember you guys were gone for a year, right? Yeah, there's some good food in New Orleans.
Yep.
Nolans.
Yep.
Yeah.
And luckily we lived in the Marigny, so we walked everywhere.
Oh,
that kept some of the weight off. But man.
Age is a bitch too, though. That'll change everything.
Yep.
Every 10 years. If you gain 10 pounds every 10 years.
Kind of.
Kind of. Maybe 5 pounds every 10 years. No. But that's interesting. So I feel like when we, mention changing, I feel like we just become, like we let go of things and become more of who we really are. Yeah.
I've heard also that your whole entire body changes molecule by molecule over the course of 7 years.
Right. Yeah.
I've heard that periodically. And I don't know that there's truth beyond that or not. I've never researched it. But I've noticed in myself that certain allergies I had when I was young, I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
I have some now that I didn't have back then.
Used to have. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I did. I was studying to be a nurse at one point, and if you think about it, like all the cells, like even your organs. I don't know about your brain. I'm not sure that your nervous system replaces itself the way the rest of your body does, but you're like literally not the same person.
Right.
Your bones, your skin, obviously your skin sloughs off and your hair grows out and stuff like that. Yeah.
But my tattoos remain the same.
But your tattoos remain the same. I finally got one.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes.
You rebel.
I know. It's big too. It goes all the way up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you got it on a spot that hurts?
Yeah, it starts on my lower right side and wraps up my side all the way up to...
That's not fucking around.
Almost my armpit.
I have mad props.
Oh, thank you. I was like, that is not an experience that I want to miss in my lifetime. My mama still doesn't know about it, so don't tell her.
Gotta be careful of my wardrobe when I go to Mom's house.
Yeah. And it's in the summertime you see it,
Right. Mom doesn't see it.
Mom does not see it. She would not approve. So she loves my husband. I'm pretty sure she likes him more than me. But he got a 3/4 sleeve, and so it like peeks out under his, a shirt, like a t-shirt,
right.
Peeks out the bottom. Oh my God. But she didn't hardly say anything. I saw the change on her face. Someone pointed it out. And she was like she was very quiet.
Trying to hold her mud.
She did. Yeah, she did good. But then she kind of was like, whatever. You can do no wrong. Like, literally, you can do no wrong. Not even the tattoo. Yeah, it was funny.
Damn it.
I know.
It's not fair.
I know. They're always ganging up on me. It's not fun. I had to draw a line. I was like, look, you need to stop doing that. But it's nice that at least they get along, right? You hear all these horror stories. Do you get along with Stephanie's family?
Yes.
And she gets along good with yours? Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. My sister and my niece are the only ones left of mine.
Your sister and your niece? Mm-hmm. That's all you have left?
Yeah.
Okay, your parents are gone. And what about your...
I have extended relatives back in Iowa.
Okay.
But I'm not really in contact with them at all. Never have been.
Oh, okay, so that's not a big loss.
Right. Yeah. And most of Steph's family are all in the East Bay.
Oh, they are?
And we go up and see them quarterly.
Oh, that's
Her
nice.
grandma's 94 and still full of piss and vinegar.
Really?
She loves me. Kind of like your mom loves Bob.
Yeah. That was nice. That's more important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're digressing. You know what I was going to ask you? About medication and like emotional or mental balance. And I know that a lot of people, I was always kind of afraid in the beginning when I first got sober to like mess around with the chemistry. Right? You see a lot of people messing around with chemistry, and I was worried for myself in the beginning that I would try to, like we were talking about switching addictions, because I thought once you start messing with your chemistry, then it's like you're kind of fucked, right?
I don't understand which direction you're going with that, though.
Well,
me personally fucking with my chemistry, or under a doctor's supervision fucking with my chemistry, like antidepressants or bipolar meds or stuff like that.
Doctors, because I feel like the doctors who dedicate their lives to people with mental illness, like bipolar and all that stuff, they actually tend to be kind of fucked up people, right?
I can think of a couple, yeah.
Right? And so, the way I've seen some people treat bipolar, for instance, from what I understand, depression, and I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on the internet, but what I've observed is depression is like self-centeredness to the extreme. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I think you mentioned before you'd wrestled with depression, but it is sort of like this self-centeredness, and then you add medication to that. It's like a pill to try to fix it, rather than trying to change someone's focus to like being service oriented or trying to think of others. And so if you start messing with the chemistry, then I don't know, it just seems like it leads from one medication to the next. Do you have personal opinions or feelings about people that take medication? Do you have I mean, there's good and bad of it, but what do you think about all that?
Well, by your by your reasoning, if I just didn't eat sugar, I wouldn't need insulin because I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Oh, that seems flawed.
Right. So mental illness and depression and bipolar and various other sundry aspects of that, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell you.
Right, we're not prescribing anything here.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what you should do with your medications or not.
Right.
One of my very absolute bottom line things, one of the only things I will fire a motherfucker over is if he's on medication and he's told me he's on medication and he decides that I'm good, I don't need it anymore, and he takes himself off his meds because he's feeling better.
You're done?
I will fire him, because what happens inevitably is that you have this built-up tolerance, in a crude level of that drug in your system. So you feel normal for a while, and you're like, see, that proves it. I knew I didn't need that drug anymore.
Right.
And little by slow, it wears off, and you end up depressed or manic or whatever is going on. And it happens so slowly and incrementally that you really do believe that everything is falling apart and it's everyone else's fault and you can't trust anybody. And I will bend over backwards to be there, save you, help you, try to brainstorm with you over what's going on that we need to, what we can tweak and change, within your recovery to try to fix that. And it was always way back in the beginning when you decided you didn't need to take meds anymore. That I will fire somebody over, because you're totally wasting my time.
Right.
Over something that could have been changed like that.
Right.
I always, if most people that come into recovery aren't coming in not knowing they're depressed or not knowing that they don't have some other kind of issue going on, and they have a background of medication, or maybe they don't. If they have a background of medication, I tell them, if you're on meds now, stick with your doctor and communicate with him or her. And if you decide you want to make a change in those meds or doses or whatever, fill me in just so I know, but argue that out with your doctor.
Okay.
And then keep me in the loop just so I know.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we will continue working steps. And if there's a change, there probably will be.
Okay.
If you haven't been on meds before and you're depressed, I'm apt, unless there's like suicidal ideation or something like that going on, let's finish the steps first.
Okay.
And then let's see how you feel when we get to 11 or 12. And then if you're still depressed, you're still, God, this isn't working, then let's see a doctor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I was, and I'm not clear about how I feel about it, because so my son actually struggled with ADHD, and we were, because of our drug history, we're scared to death to put him on medication. And then we spent my sweet little boy, he was doing 4 hours of homework every night. Like, I would sit there and I would sit on my bed and I had my laptop watching, and he's like messing around with shit, and I'd be like, hey, what's going on over there? And he'd be like, oh, I'm fine. And then he'd get back to his homework, and we did this till he was in 5th grade, and there were many nights where he would be like in tears, and I'd be in tears. I'd yell at him, and I'd be like a fucking asshole, and it was like this whole thing. One day he comes into my room and he goes, I can't fucking take this anymore. And I was like, oh my God. My sweet little angel dropped an F-bomb. Like, he just literally lost his shit, right? And so I was like, okay, Bob, we have to consider this, because there was so much shame around putting your kids on medication. But I was scared. I didn't really understand, and I still don't fully understand. But we did take him to this guy, and he explained to us how the limbic system works. It runs parallel to your blood vessels and your arteries, and how it directs the blood flow in your brain. And if you don't have interest in a subject like math, like he struggled with math, he was not interested in it, and so his limbic system wouldn't direct the blood flow to that area of the brain that processes numbers, right? And so he couldn't. There was no level of motivation, external motivation that I could provide to him that would make that blood flow go there. You know what I mean? And so he just struggled with it the whole time. Well, finally we were like, fuck it. We put him on the medication. He is all A's and B's. It was like overnight. Like all that, and then I felt like such an asshole for making him suffer for so long, right? But we tried everything else first.
Yeah.
The diet, the exercise, all the weird little shit, like they say, play marching music or music that has like a certain rhythm because it's supposed to help, whatever. So we tried all that shit, and nothing worked until the meds kicked in. So, but where I get confused is like I've had sponsees that were on like multiple things, and then there was like this one girl, she probably won't listen to this. Oh God, I help us, but she does. But I just felt like something was off, right? And she was trying to get off this medication, and she even like went to rehab. I don't know what it was, and I was always confused by it, but I felt it in my gut that she wasn't doing it right, like she was misusing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it finally and then she tells me that she relapsed and whatever. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what to do with you. I don't feel like I'm qualified to handle. I don't understand your medication and how it's supposed. Like, I don't get it. So
we're not supposed to get it.
But I didn't. But you know, she relapsed, and I was like, oh, you were fucking lying to me that whole time. Maybe that's why I didn't. I knew something was off in my gut.
But that part is about the first step. You know, and admitting to my innermost self.
Right. So she didn't admit to her innermost self that she was a drug addict, or? Yeah,
she was running a hustle in the back of her mind with her meds.
That's what I felt. I felt the hustle.
When I had my first amputation, I'm below knee on my right side.
Your first amputation started with toes?
Yeah. Yeah, my pinky toe in 1995, when they took the toe off, they realized in the middle of the surgery that my ankle was broken. So they couldn't cast my ankle, and they couldn't wrap my foot. And so I had to have my foot open and let the side of my foot slowly close in on itself. Right. Or I packed it with gauze every day and drain it and treat it every day. And that was extremely painful. So I was on pain meds.
Oh, okay.
And for about 6 months.
Pain meds for 6 months.
It took that long for
because your circulation wasn't well because of the diabetes. Is that what caused the toe amputation?
Yeah, but for the whole side of my foot to close in on itself, because they couldn't stitch it, they couldn't do anything.
I didn't know that either. That it has to close from the inside out.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that process took that long.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I become addicted to the painkillers, but I don't know it because they're serving a purpose. They're actually absorbing the amount of pain that I'm in.
Right.
And the day that the pain in my foot went, ow, and the pain in my head went, ow, oh God, like Mr. Smith, the pain. That day I went, okay. And I went to my doctor and I said, we need to do something. We need to change this. Wow. And he said, oh, you need something stronger? And I said, no. Something the exact opposite.
Okay, you want to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I need to wean off and
Interesting that he wanted to give you more.
Yeah, a lot of doctors are like that.
Well, I get that they're in it. They don't want to see you suffer, right?
Right.
They're trying to heal and remove pain at the end of the day. So I get their intentions are
But
good.
but it's up to me to be honest with them. They can't help me if I'm not honest.
Yeah. Honestly.
And that's where taking what I learned in the steps, I was able to take to a medical doctor. And when I had the mother of all nervous breakdowns at 20 years sober, I was able to take all the skill I had achieved at practicing principles in my life to the therapist and actually be honest with her.
Right.
And take all the little pieces, all the cards that I couldn't put together and flip them all face up and say, help me.
Help me. Oh, yeah. Just expose all that. But you must have had to really trust. Was it someone that you worked with regularly? When you went to a therapist?
No, I had never been to her before.
Oh, you were just desperate. You were just like...
Yep.
Okay. Because you knew yourself well enough after 20 years that you were recognizing...
I was broken.
Broken.
Absolutely broken.
Was it from the drugs? Or just a process of you just hit 20 and...
Oh, no. It was my redheaded higher power. who decided she didn't want the job.
Oh.
And I had literally given her everything, including that piece that I never give anybody.
Which is?
That piece of my heart that I always hold back from everybody, I gave her that too. But I gave it to her all powerful.
Right.
My whole happiness, serenity, life, everything is contingent on you loving me.
Oh, wow.
And she...
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And she decided she couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
And so when she left, I broke.
Oh, shit.
I broke in a way I've never broken.
Yeah.
And so, and Janie, God bless her, Janie showed up at my house like 2 weeks after the breakdown had started. Mm-hmm. And she was strung out on meth. Her head was shaved and she was about 80 pounds. And she knocked on the door and she said, "Hi." And I just opened up the door and let her in. And she lived in my garage for the next 8 months.
Wow.
Loaded the whole time.
Oh, wow.
But Janie's like family.
Yeah.
And she pretty much saved me.
Aww.
Because she would amble into the room and she would feed me and she would take me to the shower and bathe me.
Aww.
I mean, I was that broken.
Wow.
And she would give me equal doses of, yeah, she's a bitch, and yeah, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, just to kind of give me hope and slap me upside the head.
Right.
And she took care of me for 6 or 8 months.
Wow.
And so she's one of my prime examples of you never know
who's going to save
is going to be there to save you. Mm-hmm. And she got sober with Stacey Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty quick after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had nothing to do with that. She was strung out the whole time she was in my garage. But she saved me. And she kind of pushed me into, you need help, dude.
Yeah.
And I was totally willing to do it because I was done having answers. I got a big fat brain, 137 IQ, and it gets me in as much trouble as it does help me.
Yeah,
because
intelligence is in service of the ego.
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's why I push things to the degree that I push them, because I have that hunger for more knowledge and more understanding and more capacity to absorb what's going on around me.
Yeah.
But I also have very intricate ego and masks and armor around me.
Right.
You know, that I can lie to myself with.
Right. It's so important to have people around you who can be honest with you and give the outside perspective that you trust and respect.
Right. Yeah. And Janie had known me for 20 years before that. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you weren't going to be able to pull anything on her?
Nope. Nope. And I was broken enough that I didn't care.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't matter what's, like you said, you just don't never know who's going to save you.
Right.
Yeah. It sounds like you saved each other. You gave her enough space to bottom out.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Yeah. Safe place to bottom out.
But doing that with the therapist, we did 18 months together. And then one day she said, "I think we're done." And I said, "I think you're right."
Felt good.
Yeah.
And
because the book wasn't closed, but but I had a lot
you
of
didn't have to pay for it anymore.
I had a lot of new information and a lot of new tools
Yeah.
that I could practice, and part of that was in totally redefining what dating meant to me, and what connecting to another human being meant to me,
right,
and practicing doing that differently,
right,
and that launched me off into that was in 2001, 2002, and the last 16 years since then have been absolutely the best of my life.
Isn't that great? And that's like the sort of the hope of people getting into recovery, is that the better half is yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's where I really understood the theme of the 12th step being the joy of living. Mm-hmm. And I really grasped that, both in working with others and in enjoying my life. You know, and I started going off into Burning Man and doing that and exploring that world.
I'm dying to go there.
And that was amazing.
Do you still go?
No.
No. Okay, you just did it for a period of time.
Yeah, I was part of that community for half a dozen years, and I went twice. Mm-hmm. And that lapsed into the kink community. Mm-hmm. And I dove into that for a while because I've been a dom for 25 years, but actually dove into that community and became a part of that community.
Okay.
And that was incredible too. Some of the most loving, caring, honestly intimate people I've ever known, even more than most people in AA.
Wow. Listen, that is, we're already at an hour and 10 minutes. I knew that was going to happen. Can we make that the first topic of discussion for round 3? I have to have you just come on like once a month.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting because you do have a community of people that need an opportunity to, like, it's nice to be able to kind of get into it, right? And be able to talk things out.
Oh, yeah.
You have lots of friends who want to hear all your thoughts. Your fans. You have a fan base.
That's frightening.
That's frightening. Well, you have a very unique voice, and I think people are, especially having your atheist framework, so many people need to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to save everybody. I don't care if you get it through atheism or through Jesus or whatever. It's all about recovery.
Yeah, we started, me and that guy that I got the book for, and we read it back to back. We started a atheist meeting on Thursdays at Cornerstone. And the first couple of three secretaryships, I had kind of a hover over and make sure it was still all working attitude about it. Yeah. Kind of the second tradition, the elder statesman versus bleeding deacon.
Okay.
There came a point where it was rolling on its own and it was fine. Okay. And it didn't need me anymore, and I walked away. Wow. And now I visit it once a month. And there's like 30 or 40 people there sometimes. And
that's a small room too. That means it's packed.
Right. And most of the people there, I have no idea who they are. Which means that the
message is resonating.
It's resonating. There was a need, and it's living by principles.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's the two requirements for a group.
Yeah.
Surviving is that there's this purpose for it. There's a need, and it's practicing principles.
And it's practicing the principles, which are absolutes.
Yep. So it doesn't need me anymore. I can just be another visitor.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we'll have a whole nother platform for all our atheist friends to be able to get what they need to get better.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming over again, and I'll look forward to round 3 to hearing about your whole Dom kink thing and
in sobriety.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much.
I have a blast.
That's great. Yay.
Yay.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.